Discover the amazing truth. Daughter-in-law's surprising demand unveils a transformative journey. In the dimly lit back room of the old bakery, Sarah's heart raced as she wiped flour from her hands. It felt symbolic. She was dusting away the layers of family history, while clinging to the legacy left behind by Tom's mother. The kitchen was both a sanctuary and a battleground, filled with silence punctuated by the creaks of the building, a haunting reminder of the dreams that once flourished here. But everything changed when Emily, her daughter-in-law, crossed the threshold with a resolve that sent shockwaves through Sarah's carefully structured world. "You need to bring this bakery into the modern age." The words echoed, sharp enough to cut through the nostalgia that enveloped Sarah. A sensation of heat flooded her chest, mingled with disbelief. How dare Emily assume the bakery was simply a platform for innovation? This was sacred ground, rich with memories and recipes treasured like heirlooms. Her mind scrambled, torn between the desire to honor the past and the suffocating burden of familial expectations. Every loaf, every pie represented years of devotion, not just to Tom's mother, but to the family Sarah had chosen to be part of, a family she had nurtured alongside her husband, Tom. Would turning the bakery into something new, something unrecognizable, erase the very essence of what it represented? The air thickened with tension as she watched Emily pace, her enthusiasm like a sharp blade against Sarah's heart. Sarah felt the pressure of generations pressing down on her, each crumb of the family's history whispering to her to protect what was theirs. Doubt crept in. Was she simply clinging to the past? Was her loyalty to tradition inhibiting growth? But with each question came a flood of fierce determination to preserve what was already theirs. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sarah's thoughts spiraled as she returned to kneading dough, the rhythmic motion a feeble attempt to calm her mounting anxiety. With each push and fold, she felt the shadows of past conversations tugging at her. Tom's mother had chased her own dreams of opening this place, and in her pursuit, had woven their love story into its very fabric. To allow Emily's ambition to alter it felt like betrayal, a blasphemy against the woman's spirit. But then, in the midst of dough and flour, another thought cracked through the facade of stability. Was Emily right? The bakery had been static, a relic of a time that faded away. Would maintaining the old recipes mean locking them in a glass case, to be admired but never touched? An overwhelming wave of anguish washed over her, the weight of family expectations, the fear of disappointing Tom and his legacy, mixed with a desperate longing for her own unfulfilled dreams brewing just beneath the surface. Sarah was at a crossroads, and uncertainty clawed at her from every angle. She needed to confront the pulse of ambition that thrummed in her veins against the unyielding call of tradition. With each need, she questioned who she truly was and whether she could bear the change that loomed ahead. True love often means embracing uncomfortable truths, she reminded herself, but was she willing to unravel the fabric of what she had built? As she wrestled with Emily's demands, an unsettling realization flickered in the back of her mind. Could she really honor her mother-in-law's legacy and forge her own path? Or would the weight of those choices consume her completely? The tension thickened like the dough in her hands, and despite her efforts to hold on to the past, the allure of transformation beckoned, ominously, on the horizon. As the sun rose, casting a golden light through the bakery's dusty windows, Sarah felt a shift inside her. The gentle warmth washed over her, teasing out the tightness in her chest. She stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the familiar scent of yeast and sugar, yet something was different. The pulse of change hummed in her veins. What if she did embrace Emily's vision? She had always thought of herself as a guardian of tradition, yet the soft whisper of curiosity prodded at her resolve. With every rise of the dough, a symphony of new ideas played in her mind, blending with the songs of the past. Imagining the bakery becoming a place that honored its roots while also welcoming fresh currents was intoxicating. She cleared her throat. What if we try a new recipe, just one? The thought startled her, almost as if it had rushed in uninvited. This idea brewed within her like a bubbling batter, expanding and demanding attention. Determination surged, propelling her into action. She grabbed a notepad and began elevating her thoughts from shadowy doubts to tangible plans. Maybe experimenting with new flavors could modernize the menu without erasing beloved staples. A caramel sea salt brownie alongside her mother-in-law's best chocolate chip cookie, or a lavender scone to complement the classic blueberry. As she scribbled down ideas, the anxiety that had clutched at her earlier began to fade. Each fresh concept seemed to illuminate possibilities, mapping out her potential growth alongside her family's history. Then a wave of self-doubt swept over her. What if her attempts to modernize were ridiculed? What if the old customers rejected her like a meal gone bad? Would Tom agree with the changes? Questions spiraled in her head, but she caught herself. She paused, taking deep, steadying breaths. No more second-guessing herself. If she was to honor her mother-in-law's legacy, doing so authentically meant staying true to her own voice too. Face the doubts, Sarah murmured to herself, a new mantra surfacing amidst the uncertainty. Each uncertainty now turned into a challenge to conquer, a mountain to climb rather than an insurmountable brick wall. Feeling invigorated, she decided to set up a meeting with Emily. Sitting down together over coffee could open the door to dialogue and collaboration. Sarah wanted to hear Emily's thoughts in more depth, soaking in the wisdom her daughter-in-law had gleaned from the bakery's social shift. With a shared vision, they could breathe new life into a place woven into the fabric of their family. As she prepared the coffee pot, Sarah's pulse quickened at the prospect of facing this new chapter. It dawned on her that growth often demanded vulnerability, the courage to embrace discomfort. It was time to rewrite the bakery's narrative, not as a monument of nostalgia, but as a living, breathing entity filled with love and evolution. Excitement crackled in the air as she brewed their favorite blend. But just as she poured the steaming liquid, a thought crept in, grounding her in reality. She wasn't just involving Emily. She was stepping into a partnership, one that could challenge her conception of family and tradition. Could this new collaboration subvert generational boundaries, effectively intertwining her story with Emily's vision? Her heart raced with anticipation. The time had come to face her greatest fear, examining what it truly meant to blend the old with the new. If they succeeded, perhaps they would discover far more than a bakery. They could forge an identity that honored the past while embracing the future. In that moment, she understood. It was not just about baking. It was about coming to terms with change, carving out a place in the world for both herself and Emily. As she wiped the countertop, determination flashed in her eyes. The journey ahead was daunting, full of uncharted territory, but it was also brimming with potential. Just then, the bell over the door chimed, signaling Emily's approach. "You ready?" Sarah thought aloud, heart racing once more, knowing the next conversation would mold this exploration into something real, something transformative. Emily entered, her bright energy illuminating the bakery like the morning sun. Sarah's heart bubbled with equal parts excitement and anxiety. What if these changes pushed them too far apart? Yet she squashed that anxiety, focusing on the task ahead. She poured 2 steaming cups and handed one to Emily, who was surveying the space with keen interest. "I've been thinking about our conversation," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her stomach, "about incorporating some new recipes, maybe even experimenting with flavors that could resonate with the younger crowd." Emily's eyes sparkled. "That's exactly what I was hoping we could discuss. I've seen such a shift in the way people are looking for unique experiences in food. We need to adapt to stay relevant." Sarah took a sip of her coffee, the warmth reminding her of her purpose. "I want us to modernize, but I also want to respect what has been built here. What if we start with a small menu addition?" "Nothing drastic," Emily suggested, her enthusiasm contagious. "Maybe Thursday could be experimental day where we showcase a new creation. There's no loss of our traditional items, just an opportunity to play." It was a brilliant idea, and as Sarah considered it, she realized something fundamental. The fear that churned inside her was not a reflection of her inability, but her attachment to an identity she had fashioned over the years. Her deep connection to tradition was not merely about baking. It was a shield against stepping into a world reshaped by new expectations. "What about the feedback?" Sarah asked, her voice a little more resolute. "What if customers don't like it?" "That's a risk we have to take," Emily answered earnestly. "But think of the potential. Look at social media, people love to share their experiences. If we can create something that excites them, they'll spread the word. Sarah found herself nodding. This was not just about the bakery. It was an opportunity for growth for both of them. The thought ignited a flicker of courage in her. If they could navigate this together, she could reclaim her narrative with the added facet of innovation. Determined to put her fears to rest, she scribbled down some ideas. Chocolate basil cookies, pistachio lemon tarts, even a rosemary olive oil bread. Each note felt liberating, fueling the shift she had felt earlier. What if her creativity could coexist with tradition? Emily, I think we can do this, Sarah said, feeling an uncharacteristic boldness. Her eyes met Emily's, the bond between them shifting, strengthening. But I'd like your help. I know my comfort zone is rooted deeply, and I might need someone to pull me out every now and then. Of course, I need your experience just as much. We can be partners in this, Emily replied, her voice filled with sincerity. With that agreement, an invisible barrier between them crumbled. They weren't just mother-in-law and daughter-in-law anymore. They were collaborators, pioneers ready to explore uncharted culinary territory. The bakery would become their canvas, and they would paint it with flavors that told a story that belonged to both of them. As the conversation flowed, fueled by ideas and shared laughter, Sarah realized she was learning to trust again, not only in her own skills but in their partnership. Change no longer felt like a terrifying monster lurking in the shadows but a welcomed companion, promising growth and connection. Just as they started discussing the first bold experiment, a customer had entered, instantly pulling Sarah back to the reality of running a business. The moment felt pivotal, teetering between the old traditions and the new visions they had begun to outline. Looks like we should get back to work, Emily said, glancing toward the register with a playful smile. The real test starts now. Can we handle both aspects together? Sarah chuckled, the tension in her chest loosening. Let us show them what we can create. As they turned back to the kitchen, Sarah felt a spark of resolve. She could do this. She had the support, the creativity, and now a newfound clarity about her own capabilities. Just then, the bell rang again, and a familiar voice broke through the anticipation. Hey, is this the bakery that's finally going trendy? It was Tom, his eyebrow raised in playful skepticism. With Tom's arrival injecting some humor into the atmosphere, Sarah braced herself for his opinions. Could their emerging vision withstand the scrutiny of her husband? The time had come to confront the last piece of having the bakery evolve. But would Tom embrace the journey or resist it? Tom stepped further inside, the sunlight spilling around him as he surveyed the bakery's warm, familiar interior. Sarah sensed the weight of his gaze, scrutinizing not just the baked goods lining the display, but the very air of change she and Emily had begun to cultivate. Her heart raced, poised to embrace the unknown while clinging to the safety of routine. Trendy, huh? Tom smirked, leaning against the counter. Considering your famous blueberry muffins, it's about time you went a little avant-garde. His teasing tone nudged at Sarah's insecurities. Would he laugh, dismiss their ideas, or worse, express his doubts and discourage her newfound ambitions? She fought the urge to hedge her bets, to revert to her routine explanations. Instead, she focused on the growing awareness of her own strength. Actually, Emily and I are brainstorming some fresh flavors, Sarah said, instilling her voice with confidence. We're thinking of launching Experimental Day, a new creation every Thursday. Tom's brows raised, the smile still playing on his lips, yet his eyes communicated curiosity and challenge all at once. Experimental, you say? What's the market research on that? What do customers even want? The question hit her hard. What did they want? Did this mean digging deeper into a customer's psyche? Or was it about taking bold darts at innovation? Maybe it exposed a vulnerability in Sarah, revealing a deeper insecurity nestled beneath her confidence. I've had a few ideas, Emily chimed in, catching Tom's attention. We're looking at things like chocolate basil cookies and olive oil bread. It's all about keeping the essence while introducing something unexpected. For a heartbeat there was silence. Tom studied her, appreciation dancing behind his playful skepticism. Chocolate and basil? Sounds quite interesting. But how do you plan to present this to your regulars? Not everyone is ready for culinary surprises. Feeling the weight of their dialogue, Sarah interjected, that's part of the challenge, Tom. We want to engage customers and create buzz. If they see something new and intriguing, they'll come back for more. As she spoke, she could sense the shift in her own thoughts. An assertion that had once felt fragile now surged with determination. And what about feedback? Tom shot back, not mean-spirited but firm. It's risky, and if folks reject it outright, how would you handle that? Her mind raced, grappling with the fear of failure. But while doubt flickered at the edges, an ember of resolve poured warmth into her thoughts. She couldn't allow fear of judgment to overshadow her vision. I see it as a learning curve, she replied, her voice growing steadier. Every experiment will be a chance to refine what we offer. And I want the feedback, good or bad. It'll help me grow. As the tension lightened, Tom nodded appreciatively. You're learning, Sarah. Underneath those layers of tradition, I can see you're ready to stretch. There was a brief moment that hung delicately in the air, filled with unspoken words and the understanding that they were, perhaps, on the brink of transformation. She wasn't simply reshaping the bakery's menu. She was reshaping her belief in herself and her capacity to adapt. A loud crash from the back kitchen jolted them out of the moment. Emily burst into laughter. I think we might need to fix that before we tackle the big reveal. While Tom glanced over toward the sound, Sarah's heart raced with newfound hope and anticipation. Could she truly pave a new path for herself and the bakery? Let us jump into it, she said, urgency lacing her tone. We have creations to build. But deep within her, a gnawing thought lingered. Could this be the path to not just a bakery revival, but a deeper connection with the roots of her own identity? As they prepared for the shift that lay ahead, an all-too-familiar voice echoed in her mind, reminding her that change was not only about innovation but also about embracing challenges. The journey was just beginning, but moments away lay significant tests of her resolve. Would she step boldly into this new chapter or falter in the face of unforeseen obstacles? In the days that followed, the bakery buzzed with an electric energy, anticipation coursing through every corner. Sarah and Emily dived headfirst into their new project, sketching out ideas at the back table amid flower-laden countertops and the comforting aroma of baked goods. They laughed and debated, the atmosphere layered with creativity and purpose. Yet, beneath the surface, Sarah grappled with a persistent question. Were they venturing too far from their roots? As the first experimental day approached, she found herself reaching for her grandmother's old recipe book. The faded pages held tales of delicate pastries and warm breads, all crafted with love and an understanding of her family's culinary heritage. She felt drawn to those recipes, as though they were whispering to her, reminding her of the essence of their bakery, the heart of what had enticed customers through the door for years. Are we missing something? She asked Emily one afternoon, her fingers tracing the yellowed pages. What if we incorporate some traditional elements into the new flavors? A familiar twist might ease our regulars into trying something unexpected. Emily paused, considering the suggestion. Like a chocolate basil cookie but infused with the classic taste of a chocolate chip? That could bridge the gap. A spark ignited in Sarah's mind, and she began brainstorming hybrid flavors. Lavender-infused blueberry muffins or rosemary chocolate chip cookies. Her confidence swelled with each new idea, and soon, she was sketching flavor profiles and ingredient combinations. Each stroke of her pen reaffirmed her belief that change didn't necessarily mean abandoning tradition. It meant evolving it. Yet, as the day of the reveal neared, Sarah's excitement was undercut by a creeping anxiety. Would their regulars embrace these hybrids? Or would they push them aside for something more familiar? The thought gnawed at her, contrasting starkly with the joy she felt from this creative process. What if this leap into the unknown backfired? The night before experimental day, Sarah paced her small living room, a low hum of worry simmering in her chest. She replayed conversations with Tom, his probing questions echoing in her mind. It was at that moment something shifted within her. She realized that the fear of judgment, of failure, was an inherent part of any journey toward growth. It was a test, not only of her culinary skills but also of her own belief in herself. Taking a deep breath, Sarah allowed resolve to take root. She hastily wrote a letter to accompany the first batch of baked goods, explaining their journey and the inspiration behind each creation. Her words were clear, candid, and genuine, reflecting a deeper understanding of her customers' connection to the bakery's legacy. When dawn broke, Sarah and Emily were at the bakery before the crack of light, meticulously arranging their offerings. Every cookie and cupcake felt like an articulation of their shared commitment to innovation and respect for tradition. As the golden rays slipped through the windows illuminating their work, Sarah felt an undeniable sense of agency. She had poured her heart and identity into this venture, marking a shift not just in the bakery, but within herself as customers began to trickle in. She maintained a calm facade, masking the nervous knot in her stomach. When their regulars walked through the door, there was no turning back. She caught Tom's eye as he entered, a knowing smile across his face, and felt uplifted by the unspoken affirmation that floated in the air. She was ready to face whatever came next. "Here goes nothing," she muttered under her breath, each step taken further entwining her with this new narrative she was crafting. But as the first customer approached the counter with their curious gaze fixed on the cookies, an unexpected voice cut in from the side. "What's this about a new menu? I've heard some whispers and I'm not sure I like the sound of it." Sarah's heart dropped as she recognized Mrs. Thompson, a longtime customer known for her staunch loyalty to Tradition. This was the moment she had feared: confrontation. Would this be the end of her newfound resolve? Or the beginning of a deeper understanding? "Nervous already, Sarah?" Mrs. Thompson's voice rang with an authority that seemed to reverberate in the cozy bakery space. Sarah forced a small smile, her heart racing. This was not just a conversation, it felt like a trial. "I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Thompson," Sarah began, collecting her thoughts. "We've really tried to incorporate some of the beloved flavors from our past, while experimenting with new combinations. We hope you'll find something you love." The elderly woman studied Sarah, her brows furrowing as disapproval danced in her eyes. "There's a reason people love the classics. Change can be risky." Sarah inhaled slowly, summoning the calm she had felt while creating the hybrid recipes. This was not merely a matter of culinary preference. It was a deeper conversation about identity and legacy. "I understand your loyalty to tradition," she replied, her voice steady. "But I believe that experimenting with flavors can honor what we've built, while inviting people to experience something new." Mrs. Thompson shifted her weight, still uncertain. The bakery was a cherished space, a sanctuary of familiar tastes and laughter, and now it felt threatened. Sarah could feel a growing tension, not only from the customer but within herself. Was she justified in pushing boundaries? What if this shift alienated the very people she wanted to connect with? The voice of doubt whispered in the back of Sarah's mind, but she clung to the memories of her grandmother poring over those recipes. Change was a tribute, not a betrayal. She could feel the weight of her grandmother's legacy alongside the current expectations of her community. "Would you be willing to try a sample? If you don't like it, I'd love to hear why." It was a gamble. The notion danced like a wild idea, but Sarah took it, motivated by a blend of fear and resolve. Mrs. Thompson hesitated, her expression softening slightly. Perhaps it was the honesty in Sarah's voice. With shaky fingers, Sarah moved to serve a sample of the lavender-infused blueberry muffin, her breath hitching as she watched Mrs. Thompson take a tentative bite. For a brief moment the room felt frozen, every eye drawn to the unfolding scene. The seconds stretched like minutes before Mrs. Thompson's face betrayed only the slightest hint of intrigue. "It's different. But I can taste the blueberries," she said, her tone still cautious but less hostile. Sarah sensed an opening, a small victory, and she seized it. Explaining the creative process behind the muffin, she shared her grandmother's influence over their work, and how each ingredient came together as a familial story. Slowly, the uncertainty in Mrs. Thompson's eyes began to ebb as more customers tested the hybrids. Conversations unfolded. Some were reminiscent, others excited, a dynamic polarization that stirred the bakery atmosphere into something vibrant and buzzing with renewed energy. Encouraged by the positive reactions, Sarah's resolve solidified. She realized this was more than just a product launch. It was personal. This venture forced her to confront not only her culinary instincts, but also her fears of rejection, and the desire to uphold her family's legacy. When Sarah spotted Tom again amidst the crowd, his reassuring smile gave her courage. He caught her eye and nodded subtly, as if assuring her that all was still well amidst the uncertainty. "I'm willing to give it a chance," Mrs. Thompson finally declared, a glimmer of acceptance breaking through her previous sternness. "But I still want my vanilla cupcakes." Laughter erupted and Sarah felt herself relax, her shoulders lowering as the tension wound itself loose as experimental day continued to unfold. Sarah felt an internal alignment between her heart, her passion, and her purpose. Each new flavor sampled, each hesitant smile transformed into a warm grin reinvigorated her belief in herself and the changes ahead. Yet as the day drew to a close, she couldn't help but wonder. How would they sustain this momentum? What new challenges lurked in their path, now that they had stepped beyond their comfort zone? When the door swung in with the sound of a new customer, a figure silhouetted in the doorway caught her attention. The disheveled hair and intense expression piqued her curiosity. Who was this person, and how would they respond to the transformations underway in the bakery? Sarah's attention shifted from the laughter still bubbling in the bakery to the new figure who had just entered. The door's jingling announced a new presence, one that seemed to carry an air of expectation. As the silhouette stepped further into the light, Sarah's breath hitched. The stranger had an intensity that was both intimidating and intriguing, and their eyes scanned the room like they were assessing an unfamiliar battlefield. "Can I help you?" Sarah managed to ask, an instinctive smile faltering at the edges. This was territory she hadn't traversed before, the unknown paths of potential partnerships or criticisms. The newcomer, an androgynous figure in their late 20s with a nose piercing and a bright green hair streak, looked directly at her. "I've heard about your experimental flavors. People are buzzing about the changes." Sarah felt her heart momentarily stall, pride swelling in her chest. Yet, before she could bask in this brief moment of recognition, the figure continued, their tone shifting. "But I think you're making a mistake by straying too far from traditional recipes." Their words pierced through the post-experimental excitement like a knife. Loyalty to tradition surfaced again, a theme that had weighed heavily on her since Mrs. Thompson expressed her doubts. Sarah steadied herself. "I understand the sentiment, but I believe that each flavor tells its own story," she replied, her voice steadier now. "We don't want to erase history. We're enhancing it." "I respect that," the stranger said, crossing their arms. "But tell me, have you considered whose stories you're enhancing?" The question hung in the air, heavier than the pastries on the display. Part of Sarah wanted to dismiss this challenge as confrontational. Yet another part sensed an opportunity for introspection. This individual wasn't merely skeptical, they seemed to invite dialogue. "Every recipe has its roots," Sarah responded thoughtfully. "If my grandmother's chocolate chip cookies are the foundation, then the lavender muffin is an extension of that story, not a replacement." The stranger raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What if your grandmother's legacy is something different than what you think it is? What if you're layering your own story over it without fully understanding the original?" The notion dangled like a carrot just out of reach. Could it be true? Beneath her burgeoning confidence lay a deep-seated fear that perhaps she was forging ahead, without fully grasping the implications of her changes. What if she was unintentionally twisting her grandmother's legacy into something unrecognizable? "I need to consider my roots more," Sarah muttered, almost to herself. The sudden realization that her journey involved deciphering her family's history felt like a puzzle spreading out before her. The stranger noticed her faltering confidence and softened. "I'm not here to tear you down. I'm Axel, by the way. I'm a food writer and I'm curious about what you're doing here. But the true test will be whether you can engage with your family's recipes on a deeper level, not just as a jumping-off point." With that, Axel stepped toward the counter, picking up a lavender muffin to examine it, their curiosity seemingly genuine. As they took a bite, the bakery enveloped them in a shared moment of silence. Everyone awaited their response. Sarah felt the tension mount again as she considered how she would handle critical feedback. Was her ambition strong enough to embrace honesty, even if it hurt? What if their opinion shifted her perspective on everything she had built so far? The dawning realization was daunting. She was, after all, unraveling divine threads of family history and culinary memory. "A twist that brings new life," Axel finally announced, savoring the flavors thoughtfully. "But does it respect the original intent? That's what you need to figure out." As Axel smiled, Sarah's heart danced again, but with a newfound urgency to confront not just others' doubts but her own internal hesitations. What did her grandfather think of these changes? How deeply had she studied her grandmother's legacy? Determination began to pulse through her veins. Longing to integrate her past with her present, not erase it, suddenly felt like a noble quest. As the final customers trickled out of the bakery, Sarah grabbed a notebook, eager to delve deeper into the family recipes she had taken for granted. Decisions loomed, and she had an inkling that there was a looming confrontation with her past just waiting to unfold. She had begun a transformative journey, but it would require facing the truth of who she was and what her family's legacy truly meant. Glancing at Axel, whom she could sense was willing to help, she wondered how this unexpected partnership might evolve. Was he the key to unlocking deeper connections with her family's history? As she scribbled down her thoughts, Sarah caught a glimpse of a broad-shouldered figure outside the bakery. It was Tom, his face marred by concern. What had he sensed? Could there be more tension on the horizon as conflicts began to surface not just within her but between those she had come to rely on the most? As Tom stepped into the bakery, the familiar scent of fresh pastries mingled with the tension in the air, making Sarah acutely aware of the heightened stakes surrounding her culinary adventure. His brow furrowed into a deep V, suggesting unease, but also concern that reached beyond the ordinary. The door swung shut with a soft clink, sealing them into this moment where business and personal matters tangibly collided. "Can we talk?" Tom leaned against the counter, his voice low. The question felt loaded, as if he were standing at the precipice of an unseen chasm. Sarah sensed the urgency beneath his usual laid-back demeanor. Nodding, she gestured for him to join her at a corner table, away from the remaining chatter of post-work customers and the steam rising from the espresso machine. "I saw you talking to Axel," he began, his eyes narrowing. "I have a gut feeling about that person. Are you sure they're the right influence on you?" With a pang of frustration, she could feel the walls of her ambition pressing in on her again. "They're a food writer, Tom, a professional. I'm trying to challenge myself, to grow. Think of it as research. Is it really research? Or are you just trying to escape from what you already know?" His question bore the weight of genuine concern but felt like a stab in the dark, a hit against her vulnerabilities. Sarah closed her notebook, the words spinning away from her. She had underground doubts about her experiments, and Tom's words cracked open that seam of insecurity. "The other day, Axel made me realize that I haven't truly engaged with my family's recipes. I don't want to lose sight of where I came from." Tom shifted in his seat, his expression softening. "So why don't you talk to your grandfather about it? Maybe he can help you understand the roots of it all." Fear snaked through her thoughts. Conversations with her grandfather had always felt intimidating, a matchup of legacy and tradition. Yet, there lurked a budding determination inside her, the kind that fueled her pursuit of culinary innovation. Could engaging with him be the bridge she needed? I think I need to," Sarah finally said, her voice trembling at the idea but buoyed by resolve. Opening a dialogue with her grandfather felt daunting. What if he rejected her new interpretations? What if he demanded an adherence to tradition that she wasn't ready to fully accept? Tom nodded at her response, and she could see the flicker of pride in his gaze, a flicker that set off an echo of warmth in her chest. "You've got this, Sarah. Just remember, it's about merging the past with the present, not obliterating one for the sake of the other." Suddenly, the conversation that felt so serious transformed. A plan was forming in her mind, something that required courage but also promised revelation. "I'll invite him to the bakery," she said, her voice now infused with ambition. "We'll make a day of it, cooking and talking. I want to understand his history so I can infuse it into my ideas." Tom smiled, the tension in his shoulders relaxing. "And if Axel is as interested as you claim, they might want to write about it. Potentially a deeper exploration, right?" The prospect of opening this chapter of her life excited her. Yet, it also terrified her because it meant confronting everything she had been dodging, the fears about traditionalism, her own changing identity, and whether she was brave enough to blend those worlds. As she contemplated crafting an honest invitation to her grandfather, a heaviness settled in her gut. The urgency to act now bore down upon her, and she could feel the moment racing towards a climax. "Tom," she said, her voice steadier now, "the time has come to face these roots." He grinned, half cheeky. "And what about Axel? Are you willing to let them into that space too?" Sarah took a deep breath, her mind whirling with possibilities. Axel had the potential to offer not just feedback, but a fresh perspective as she ventured into the territory of familial history. Perhaps it's time we all embraced the complexity of flavor, She replied, a flame of hope, igniting her ambition and resolve. Let us see how we can intertwine these stories. As the sunlight glinted through the window, illuminating the dust motes swirling in the air, Sarah felt that she was embarking on a transformative journey, one that would demand every ounce of sincerity and commitment she had. But first, she would need to confront her grandfather and discover the depth of her legacy. Glancing at Tom, her heart raced with both fear and excitement at the invitation she would craft. Would her plan be a recipe for success, or was she about to unlock more than just flavors? With each tick of the clock, the weight of Sarah's decision settled upon her shoulders like an unexpected downpour. She sat at her small desk in the bakery, scattered recipes and notes surrounding her, the ink blending into a chaotic blur of ambition and confusion. She controlled the pen, yet her thoughts spun wildly, an uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. Inviting her grandfather would be both a test and a revelation, a chance to wrestle with her past while sprinting towards her future. She inhaled deeply, the scent of cinnamon intertwining with her anxiety, as if her favorite spice could somehow provide clarity. Would he resist her ideas? Would he see her as a disappointment, a young chef with bold dreams but limited grace? The doubts leaked into her mind, and for a moment she hesitated, the pen hovering just above the paper. Drawing on Tom's encouragement, she began to jot down the invitation, word by word, constructing a bridge between her old life and this new culinary path she envisioned. Dear Grandpa, she wrote, her handwriting shaky but determined, I would love to cook with you at the bakery. She paused, biting her lip as she wrestled with the next line. Would he understand what she was asking him? Would he recognize the love behind her ambition? Visioning him standing at the counter, flour dusting his clothes, she added, I want us to explore the family recipes together, to blend our traditions with new ideas. As she wrote, the realization struck her like a sudden gust of wind. This wasn't merely about cooking. It encapsulated much more. This was a confrontation with her fears, a reclamation of her heritage, and an exploration of her own identity. Setting down the pen, she felt a spark awaken inside her as the adrenaline coursed through her veins. She was ready to face her grandfather, ready to listen to his stories and embrace his legacy while daring to intertwine it with her own vision. Suddenly, it wasn't just a written invitation, it became a testament to her determination. With the invitation drafted, a complicated mix of anticipation and dread surged within her. Would Axel's presence complicate things further? The looming question became a new layer of anxiety. Would her grandfather tolerate the outsider viewing their sacred moments? But a whisper of impulse convinced her that including Axel might offer a fresh lens through which to view her family's legacy and her culinary battles. After sealing the envelope, she straightened, the decision solidifying in her mind. She wouldn't just invite her grandfather to the bakery. She would invite the world of culinary critique into the warmth of their family kitchen. A symphony of flavors and histories would create a dish rich in storytelling, a narrative she wished to wrestle with rather than ignore. The following day arrived too soon. The bakery had an air of excited chatter as she prepared for her grandfather's visit, and the scents danced around her like childhood memories. She caught snippets of laughter that echoed against the tiles, the sound of camaraderie that had once been so alien to her. As she sat up, Tom stepped into the space, his smile radiant. Everything ready? You look determined. She laughed, a lightness breaking through the weight on her shoulders. Determined, yes, but also terrified. Tom crossed his arms, leaning casually against the counter. Any last-minute doubts? Just the usual, she admitted, her gaze drifting towards the door, half expecting her grandfather to waltz in like a ghost of the past. What if he thinks my ideas are foolish? Yes, so traditional. Maybe foolishness is necessary for innovation. His encouragement felt like a protective shield against the next wave of insecurity. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and in walked an elderly man with a familiar air of authority, his brow furrowing at the sight of the bustling bakery, a world he had built but never intended to enter. Sarah's heart raced as she met his gaze, ready to confront the tides of expectation and tradition. This could either be the moment of transformation she desired or a clash of ideals that would send her spiraling into uncertainty. Would he embrace her new vision? Or would the weight of history scuttle her ambitions? As she opened her mouth to speak, the true battle began, a pursuit not only for respect, but also for acceptance of change that could bridge generations and flavors alike. Would she find a way to merge their worlds? Or was she standing on the edge of a culinary void? The tension in the bakery was palpable as Sarah watched her grandfather step through the door. The faint smell of flour mingled with the excitement and anxiety buzzing in the air. He looked around with caution, his eyes settling on the bright new displays and the freshly painted walls, tokens of the journey she had begun. "Sarah," he greeted, his voice laced with curiosity and underlying wariness. "Grandpa," she responded, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm so glad you could come today." They exchanged small talk while she led him to the table where the experimental creations waited, each representing a unique blend of past and present, tradition and innovation. Sarah felt a surge of determination. This was her moment to share not just pastries but a narrative of growth, a bridging of their distinct culinary legacies. "These are some new recipes I've been working on," she began, gesturing towards the assortment. "I've incorporated some of Grandma's traditional ingredients into modern flavors to honor her legacy, like a chocolate chip cookie infused with lavender." Her grandfather raised a skeptical eyebrow, his expression contemplative. "Lavender and chocolate? That sounds unconventional." "Exactly," Sarah replied, energizing the exchange. "But it's not about altering our foundation. It's about expanding what we can experience. I want to hear your thoughts, your stories about the recipes you grew up with." The corners of his mouth curled slightly, hinting at intrigue behind his hesitance. "Let us see how they taste then." Sarah handed him a chocolate lavender cookie, her heart racing as he took a bite. The bakery grew still, everyone holding their breath as though waiting for a verdict from an ancient judge. His eyes widened momentarily, surprised by the interplay of flavors, the familiar sweetness of chocolate unexpectedly complemented by the aromatic essence of lavender. "It's interesting," he finally admitted, a slow smile spreading across his face. Encouraged, Sarah stepped forward. "I want to learn more about the recipes you once made. What about the blueberry muffins? They're one of my favorites." "Ah, a classic," he replied, settling into a more comfortable demeanor. "The trick is using fresh berries, always sourced from the right place. But why should we stop there? What if we added something different, like a touch of lemon zest for brightness?" As they brainstormed together, Sarah felt the weight of her fears lift. She had come to see her grandfather not as a rigid gatekeeper of tradition, but as a wellspring of creativity. Their dialogue flowed freely now, intertwining their legacies, past and present. In the corner of the bakery, Axel observed the energetic exchange, their interest piqued. "This is what I love to see, a conversation that blends history with innovation. Perhaps I can write about your creative process, highlighting how each dish honors your heritage while exploring new horizons." Sarah couldn't shake the thrill of that prospect. For the first time, she felt capable of merging those worlds without losing herself in the process. With her grandfather's stories unfurled like petals in bloom, she realized that blending tradition and innovation could elevate her path as a baker while preserving the essence of her family's history. As the afternoon morphed into camaraderie, laughter erupted amid trials of flavors. Ultimately, she served a batch of blueberry muffins, infused with freshly grated lemon zest, to the group. The warmth of familiarity melded with excitement as everyone tasted the dish. Her grandfather beamed with pride, the communal moment signaling acceptance, a heartbeat echoing the generations they represented. By the end of the day, Sarah stood amidst her past and future, feeling both grounded and liberated. She had not just transformed her bakery. She had transformed herself, gaining clarity, confidence, and meaningful connections with her family's legacy. "Remember, Sarah," her grandfather said as they wrapped up, "tradition can exist within evolution. It's not about disregarding it, it's about breathing new life into it. Always remember that balance." "What about revisiting these recipes together?" she suggested. "Incorporating more of our stories into our baking process?" "Absolutely," he agreed, a spark reigniting in his eyes. As they exchanged ideas, Sarah realized she had not only conquered the fear of judgment that once paralyzed her, but had also found her voice in the narrative of her bakery. It was hers to shape, celebrate, and enrich. She now understood that her growth stemmed from embracing vulnerability while forging connections that inspired her craft. And from that moment on, she envisioned not just a bakery, but a legacy rooted firmly in the balance of love, history, and innovation, not just the story of a product, but the beating heart of family and the artist she had become. Every person who stepped into her bakery would experience this journey interwoven with flavors from her grandmother's cherished recipes to the new creations that reflected her vision. Sarah emerged, not only as a baker but as a curator of her own life story, ready to share a slice of transformation with the world. As she stood amidst the cheerful atmosphere, Sarah reflected on everything that had led her here. The triumphs, the tribulations, and the unshakable resolve to blend old foundations with the creative freedom of today. With her grandfather's approval, her partnership with Emily, and Axel's intention to document their journey, Sarah felt ready to expand her narrative into the community. The future was bright, and the path she had forged would honor the past while inviting change, a perfect recipe for success. Now, as you've witnessed this transformative journey, it's time for action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support truly matters. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful ending. And don't hold back, let your thoughts be known. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share the inspiration.